lot of time is wasted. Love it. So recording is in progress. This particular topic is very close to my heart because I really believe that a lot of time is wasted, truly wasted in incident investigation. You're thinking, what? Yes, when there is no recurrent training for this topic, there is a lot of gaps that we fail to fill in, and incidents continue to happen. We just had a couple of recent incidents, the explosions up in Yolo County, and that was a storage facility. Big question, why did they happen? And the incident investigation that will take place will reveal lessons, and many times we will see that some of the warning signs, the red flags, were there prior to the incident, but because the near misses, but because our injury and illness prevention plan is not effective, these things continue to occur. My name is on the screen. I am so grateful to all of you dedicating some time to go over these topics and these updates. I am just very grateful. And remember, I am not an attorney, and I'm not also a healthcare practitioner. I am a consultant, and I've been doing safety training, safety inspections, and everything related with the 10-hour and 30-hour OSHA classes since 2011. I love the work we do in English and Spanish. So if you have needs for a class to be taken or brought to your facility, please do let us know. So the objectives today, like I said, because I believe that incident investigation done the right way will give you a leg up towards great compliance, towards really eliminating those injuries and illnesses at the workplace. I want you to know that there's a way of doing it. And there is also a mandatory requirement here in California to have incident investigation in place. Okay, so the first one is really getting away from placing blame. That's my first objective. Because if we don't get away from placing blame, and give me a quick second, Veronica, I have someone at my door. I'm just gonna quickly pause this and come back to you for a second.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
Yes, and while Alba goes ahead and checks on the door, I just wanted to let you all know, yes, we will be recording. I see it in the chat. We will be getting a recording. Can I talk to the host later about training for worker compensation attorneys? Yes, if you have any training requests, either directly for Alba or for us as a center, you can always contact us. I'll put our email in the chat, and you can always stay afterwards too. We tend to just stay here for a couple minutes. So if you want to talk to us, you can also do that. Thank you.
Please forgive me about that. Sometimes it can get very noisy, and I just wanted to make sure I handled it. Thank you. Am I back online?
Yes, we're good.
Okay,
Yes, we're good.
Good. Okay, so distinguishing between placing blame and preventing incidents, because placing blame is truly one of the things that I see most on the reports, and we'll see examples of what that means, okay? Then recognizing the critical difference between surface causes and root causes. I find the issue here because for all of you on this call, it might be very familiar. These terms are familiar. Like, yeah, I know. The whole goal of incident investigation is to find the real root cause, the root of the matter. And once we really tackle that root cause, the incident will not happen again. But the thing is, if you have received training recently, you will be able to get there. But for the most part, supervisors who are doing these incident investigations on a daily basis in our businesses or organizations don't have friendly reminders or prompts or forms that are good to guide them by the hand. Because remember, unless you do have a whole team for incident investigation that's all they do, because you have or work for a large organization that requires people, safety people, to be on board, salaried employees, or a dedicated position for safety, most likely you are delegating this incident investigation position to your supervisors. And supervisors are not there to only do incident investigation. That's a collateral duty. That's something that they don't do day in, day out. So it is very important to give them those friendly reminders, those forms that guide them by the hand. And I'm going to touch on that as well. Number 3 would be to outline the essential first steps for securing an incident scene and preserving evidence. So we'll talk about the main steps that everybody knows, and then we'll talk about some of the tips for securing an incident scene as one of the first steps to good incident investigation. All right, very good. This is very interesting. Preventable and non-preventable acts. So most of the time when we have incidents, injuries, illness, disease at the workplace, we think, or whenever an injury occurs, we think, oh, well, we couldn't have foreseen that. We would not, how could we have prevented this? It was an accident, right? Just recently talked about, we went over a list of incidents at one of my clients, and just going over some of these things, the comments many times come as, you know what, that was an accident. We could have not been ready for that. It just got out of hand and we just weren't ready for that. But it's just the way it goes. When you have someone that talks like that, and then you send them to good training for incident investigation, then they come back and they go, you know what? We should go back and take a look at what are the procedures in place that we have to actually be ready for a situation like this so that we prevent it. And so their eyes are all of a sudden wide open to, there is a possibility that we could prevent this. We cannot just say, oh, it's an accident. Accidents are like this. And many times you really cannot prevent them. Well, OSHA says that only 2% of all workplace accidents are unpreventable. That means we've got 98% of our incidents, illness, diseases at work that are preventable. So that's a lot. And that's because only 2% will be comprised of things such as heart attacks or, things that you really, it's hard to foresee. For example, earthquakes, there's more documentation now and technology to predict when something's going to happen, such as an earthquake. And still, you have training for what to do during an earthquake that will also diminish the risk or the types of injuries and death because of an earthquake. So once again, only 2%, right? When we look at incident investigation from this point of view, we change our philosophy. We change how we think, and we go from, well, this happened because the employee wasn't paying attention, to how are we failing our employees as an organization? How can we improve our system, right? And I know sometimes it sounds strange, like, hey, wait a minute, we're not failing our employees. What's happening here is that, they need babysitting, and they're always, it's just, they're always distracted, they always forget. And if we go back to that, then we're forgetting that we're all human beings. And it's about our system and those checks and balances that we can put in place to help with even those issues of human behavior, right? So that we can, because many times that portion of human behavior will or is a surface cost, right? And so system failure is what we're looking into. Where are we failing our workers, right? And so we know that those things refer to safety programs, a lack of safety program, a lack of a training session, or maybe training that was not effective, a lack of resources that we're not providing, or that we don't even know that they exist to prevent this particular type of injury or disease. Enforcement, maybe our disciplinary procedures are not good enough, but the worst thing we could do is to place blame and then immediately refer it to human resources for disciplinary action, because then no one is going to want to tell you the details of that incident, right? And what you want to do is make sure that they know you're not the police, that you actually truly want to find out, where are we failing? Where are the weaknesses in our system, so those injuries and illnesses do not take place again. And for supervision, many times we have incidents that take place when our employees are alone, when they work alone, when they are going to the facility very early in the morning or very late, and the lighting is not good, and the parking lots are not well lit, or the area where they're walking is hazardous and they're alone. All those things are important, and it does change our mind to a systems approach, right? And we talked about this. So here it is. Incidents are really, truly or the reason they occur is because there's defects in our safety program or system. We do want to see our injury and illness prevention program as the program that we want to make truly effective in order to prevent injury, disease, and illness, right? So people are only one component of this very complex list of processes that lead to incidents. For example, I was walking a facility and I took this picture and I see that they have a ladder. And this was, I think, a 3-foot ladder. And it was just tucked away right next to where they grab all their igloos for water. And as you're walking through, no one is using it, but you can see immediately that if you find a couple of these all around and they don't have tags, Verena, you can already understand there's a hole in your system. How is that? Because your injury and illness prevention program says, as you walk the floor, as you do your inspections and you find deficiencies like this, that just tells me right there and then the sticker, the safety sticker on that ladder is not visible. So you cannot tell the capacity of the ladder. It doesn't have the safety ratings on it. It doesn't, nothing. It's not visible anymore, right? And then it would be interesting to take that ladder out and take a look at the integrity of it. Maybe it's all rusted, maybe a lot of paint and chemicals on it because it's old. It's been, there's a lot of wear and tear on the feet of it. It needs to be put away and out of service, right? And dispose of it appropriately, because if we just put it in the trash just like it is, someone may be tempted to grab it and use it. But all of that is part of California's Title VIII 3276 for portable ladder injury prevention, right? So there's a whole program and training that goes into place. So when you find something like this, it does give you those red flags that says, hey, we don't have anything where we have an inventory of ladders. We don't know where our ladders are. We haven't even done a general inspection. And obviously, because of the way this sticker or safety decal is in, we know that no one is doing a daily inspection. No one is reporting that this ladder should be put out of service. So those are the things that safety inspection allow us to find out, and also throws light on those defects in our system. And this is prior to those injuries occurring. So these are the same things that you're looking at when you get there and you have to take pictures of an incident and you see, for example, a ladder involved in an incident that looks like this. And so it would be immediately clear to you that there are some defects in your portable ladder injury prevention, or even your policy or your training, which is mandated by Cal OSHA statute. All right, so incidents are the result of multiple causes and defects in our program. And that's what we're trying to do, to fix the system and not to place blame. And so anytime we investigate and we are jotting down on our forms how this happened and how can we prevent it, we want to make sure that the employee who's being either interviewed or who we are extending a form for them to fill out knows that the goal of this whole process is to fix the system and not to point the finger at anyone. And it is important for employees to know this, because many times they don't want to provide information about the incidents. They don't want to talk about everything that took place prior to the event, during the event, and after the event. And when I say event, I mean the incident. And they don't want to go into detail because they're afraid someone's going to get in trouble. So these are some of the challenges that you as an incident investigator come across, that we need to discuss and that we really need to make people aware, especially your investigators, especially your supervisors, and those that go out there to investigate. There are some issues also with our definitions. All of you who have been taking these classes and who follow us and who, set aside your first Friday of the month to take this class, you know that I'm big on definitions, and I'm not the only one big on definitions. OSHA, California OSHA, and OSHA nationwide, every time they prepare a standard and they publish a standard for that matter, they have the scope, meaning who does that regulation apply to? And the next thing after scope is definitions. Definitions are very important. When you look at Title VIII California Code of Regulations 3203, which refers to the Injury and Illness Prevention Program, element number 5 talks about incident investigation. And here in California, incident investigation is not talked about in detail. It only says to have a process for incident investigation, right? There's a lot of freedom then that is given to you in order to know how to put this program in place. So here is what I advise. Number 1, have something in writing that becomes your protocol or your policy for incident investigation. That's number one. Number two, in that set of instructions or your guideline for incident investigation, make sure that you put a section for definitions. These definitions will help your supervisors who are doing these investigations to have a quick reference and to look at some of these things that they need to refresh their mind about, especially if you don't have these incidents occurring often, right? So an accident suggests an event that was random, that could not have been prevented, versus an incident, which is a work-related event, right? That could have occurred an injury, illness, or disease, or even a fatality, or so a work-related event in which an injury, illness, regardless of severity or fatality, occurred or could have occurred. And so you know now that incident is a broader term. And then you also define near miss or close call, which is an incident that could have caused serious injury or illness, but did not. And then you get into describing and defining what's direct cause, surface cause, root cause. This is very, very important because that way, when a supervisor needs to refresh their mind, they have a set of definitions, right? It also tells them that they're not going to call these things accidents, because accident, Webster's dictionary says, an act of God, something that you could not have foreseen. And you don't want them to get into that mindset. You want supervisors or incident investigators to get into the mindset of this is an incident, something that could have been prevented. What you should investigate are all work-related fatalities, of course, all work-related incidents, right? And you should have reporting forms for these incidents and your own forms, as long as you can document it properly and provide short and long-term solutions, and that's important. Work-related near misses should be considered a great opportunity to learn. And also, first aid should be investigated at the point where the same thing continues to occur over and over. Like what? Well, sometimes you have a particular department where there's a lot of nicks and cuts that are taking place, and they end up on your first aid log. Well, that should, raise that flag. Those are the things that I am always looking into. Why is this happening? Could we see a trend here? And could this be something later on could be a full-blown incident and we need to handle it before it becomes something major? There is a guide by OSHA that is really, really good. I have the link right here. And if I am going to put it in the chat, I do advise you to take a look at it because, let me see, it does have a lot of the good stuff that we're going to be discussing today. Let me share it here in the chat. Okay. So, and I'm also going to attach it to the presentation as we are done, when we're done today. So, this publication starts or does a little introduction that says that investigations really truly save money, right? And the National Safety Council estimates that on average, if you're able to prevent a workplace injury, you can save about 40 grand, right? And preventing a fatality, more than 1.4 million. So you're going to save all that suffering for the workers, their families, money for your company, and you're going to also save in direct and indirect costs. And we know that direct costs are all of those monies that go into medical care, everything that you can see and account for clearly. But all of those indirect costs after an injury have to do with things such as lower productivity, morale that is down because the employees feel sad someone got hurt, so they slow down, and that also costs money to companies and to your operation. So we talked about some of these challenges. We face these challenges as investigators, and if you're the person in charge of safety at your facility or organization, you are the person who also trains the supervisors or the people in charge of the investigations. And so the challenges are, we continue to write down on our reports, employee was distracted as the actual cause of the incident. So that is more towards placing blame and pointing the finger versus looking beyond those immediate and obvious causes, right? And that's what we need to do. We need to really train people to look beyond those immediate causes. We have to decide what information is relevant. We have to eliminate those preconceptions about the place or persons involved. If you're in a situation where the culture lately pushes you towards believing one way or another, and you are prejudiced against either that department or what's been going on in that area where the incident occurred, it's better that you have someone else conduct the investigation for you. Finding true program and systemic deficiencies is our goal, like I said. So we are not looking to place blame. We're not looking into what was the behavior and what was the employee doing. Of course, all of those things are contributing factors or surface causes, and we should decide which of those are worth investigating in order to get to the root causes. But we are looking for systemic deficiencies, right? Getting upper management support is another one of our challenges, because once we do our investigation many times, we come back with great suggestions for improvement to help fix those systemic deficiencies, right? And we find that we don't have the money for the new PPE, or we cannot allocate the time to get the entire crew to get into a training session, etc. So getting upper management support is very important. And we have to be able to anticipate what their questions will be at the time we request this new equipment or this training session, etc., in order for us to have that justification. There's a great tool in the OSHA website that is called Safety Pace, and I will invite you to jot it down or write it down and look it up after today's training, because we only have an hour and it's really limited time. This is meant to be an introduction for incident investigation. We will have a lengthier class, a 2-day class that will be marketed to you guys. We will send an actual note as to when this class will take place, and you can take that 4-hour 2-day class, and we will be happy when you do it. For some reason, my PowerPoint is not moving slides. So let's see. Give me a quick second. Okay. Here is a list of things that end up in our reports. Employee was distracted. Employee forgot his equipment or her equipment. Employee did not use the right equipment. Employee is always getting into accidents or causing accidents. Trust me, I've seen all of these that I have listed here. I've seen them on the reports as the cause of the incident. Employee tripped, just like that. Employee tripped. Employee did not lift with his legs or her legs. Do any of those reasons, what do you think? Do any of those reasons help us improve our program and prevent repeat incident of the same type? Well, the answer is no. It's not going to help us. If we put that as the cause, then we throw our hands up in the air and say, well, the employee was distracted, so there's nothing I could have done, right? Challenge number 2 that is very common: a worker slips on a puddle of oil on the plant floor and falls. So this is just a quick example of a slip, trip, and fall. Very common. We all have slip, trip, and falls. And don't fall asleep, because in a moment, I'm going to ask all of you to share one of your recent incidents. So if you want to take a moment right now, as we explain a little bit of this incident, take a look at your list, at your current list of incidents, or if you can remember something that just happened recently and that you can summarize, just like right here on my screen, that you can summarize and say, well, you know what, I did have a recent incident, and tell us about your particular situation. You don't have to reveal your name's organization or the name of the employee, nothing, just something brief like this. Yep, I did have a worker who slept and fell. There was a puddle of oil on the floor and he fell, right? And so a traditional investigation may say, well, what caused it? Because we know that we have to ask the 5 W's, right? It's like, okay, so why, where, who, how, when, right? And so you say, okay, so the oil spilled on the floor, and obviously that's why he fell. The oil spilled on the floor is the main cause of the injury. And then you go, what would be my proposed solution to that? Well, you know what? Let's just make sure that everybody cleans up spills the moment they happened, and make sure that they instruct the worker to be more careful. And so you write it down, there was oil spill on the floor, and the solution is to make sure everybody cleans up spills right away. And we should instruct workers to be more aware of what's going on. That kind of thing you put in your report, and that's all you do. Well, if you leave it there and that's all you do, which is normally what happens, let's be honest, this is just a slip, trip, and fall. And you think, well, it was all on the floor. Obviously, they're not cleaning the spills, and people should be more careful. That's what and is on your report, and you're thinking, this is not truly a root cause analysis, because it doesn't reveal why was that oil on the floor, right? The oil on the floor is just a symptom of something more fundamental, right? There's a problem here as to we're not digging enough. We are not looking beyond those obvious immediate causes, right? So we're just looking at that direct cause, oil spill on the floor, and then we're not getting into some sort of technique to find out more about the incident. And in this case, we're just going to briefly discuss the why techniques, just asking why at least 5 times, but many times by the third why, you already got a little bit more of an idea where's your systemic deficiency. So let's do a little bit of an exercise and discuss some of the recent incidents that you've had in your place of employment. And let's talk about what would it look like to just place blame for your particular type of incident. And in your opinion, what would be that immediate cause of those incidents, if you can mention more than one? And then just mentioning some of those possible systemic deficiencies. And I'm going to give you here another tip, right? And we go a little bit more in depth when we take a course that is larger in duration. But systemic deficiencies most of the time refers to the piece. And I like to say the piece because usually it is something in the P that is missing. Either a program, a policy, a process, a effective training program, again, a plan, right? So it's always within the P's. And whenever you can find that something within the P's was missing, then you're getting closer to that root cause. So that's when you talk about, I am now digging deep enough. Okay. So before I keep going and we get into those basic steps for incident investigation, can anyone or does anyone want to share a little bit of some of those recent incidents that we can talk about, those obvious just placing blame type of thing and not looking deep enough into those systemic deficiencies? And of course, you can unmute yourself and you could just put it in the chat. And I know I have a question there. Let's see. Okay, yes, I do have several of you. I love it. So we have one injury here. Missed last step on the ladder. Oh my goodness gracious. That's a very common one, okay? Missed last step on a ladder, suffered fractured tibia. When we talk about portable ladder and injury prevention, when I do my training, I always tell them the newer generation of ladders, they have a clicker at the end step so that when people are descending, the clicker makes that little clicking noise as you stepped on the last step so that you don't miss the step, so that the worker knows, oh, I know my ladder now, and I know that once I step on the last step, that is truly my last step. It clicks and I get off. And that's really important because missing the last step on a ladder is one of the main causes for ankle injuries and foot injuries when coming off of ladders, right? Okay, but once again, it could be a thing of, well, he missed, that you can't prevent that. He or she missed the last step on the ladder. She was just maybe thinking of something else. You can't, right? So when you start saying, but why did she miss the last step on the ladder? Why? Why? Because she was distracted. Okay, that's okay. Why was she distracted? Her buddy was talking to her or him. Why were they talking? Because they were not, let's say that they were distracted, they were not paying attention. Don't stop there. Why were they not paying attention? Because there's not that much awareness about how problematic or how high incidents or injuries occur when using portable ladders, because the last time we had a portable ladder training was 3 years ago. Okay, now you're getting closer to those P's. they were distracted, or they were talking to each other while they were working on that ladder, whatever it is, if it's distraction, if it's the person forgot, if it's the person was in a hurry and missed the last step on the ladder, if you stop right there and you don't continue to dig, you're not going to prevent that incident from ever happening again. So if you want to pitch in why that happened, that'd be great. If you want to leave it there and I can elaborate more on that, I can go on and say, for example, look into your training for portable ladder and see if the training was effective. See if the training actually went over the 7 mandated bullet points per California OSHA portable ladder training, because the number one bullet point in that training required by CalOSHA talks about a discussion of injuries that occur when using portable ladders. And that makes people aware, right? That does bring to the attention of, oh, like that's one of the things I tell them. By the way, guys, missing that last step on the portable ladder is one of the greater causes of foot injuries. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I always miss that last step. And it's because I'm in a hurry or I get distracted. That brings it to the attention of the worker. And then again, now our system is targeting those issues of forgetfulness. Our system, our program, our training program is targeting those issues of distraction. Okay, so very good. On the next one, I have a piece of concrete fell on the foot of a machine operator when he exited the machine due to a different operator pushing a pile of stacked concrete pieces. Okay, so now this brings me to why did this different operator was pushing a pile of stacked concrete pieces? Did that happen before it was time for him to do it? Was there a lack of communication between the two operators? And then as you answer those questions, you can see that whenever people are working together and there is a need for that communication between them, you have to have specific sets of procedural steps, SOPs, right? Or step-by-step work instructions. And many times, if it's a one-time job, it's a non-routine job, those step-by-step procedures get reviewed before the job is done. In this case, it sounds like it was machine operator, something that they do all the time. So this different operator was pushing this other pile. Okay, where was the lack of communication, or was he doing it before time? And how can we prevent this from ever happening again? Now, here's another thing that happens often and doesn't allow for these injuries to never occur again. And here it is. So you look at an injury like this one and says, you know what? It was miscommunication. Let's say it was miscommunication, unless you want to tell me more about how that happened. But let's say it was miscommunication, right? And then this person says, no, we talked to them. We talked to them and we told them, when you're operating this machine, you have to wait till this person does ABC. Then you push the pile. That way, the concrete or the pieces of material are not going to fall on anyone's toes. And then you talk to them about it. The whole thing is discussed so it doesn't happen again. But here's the problem. You just discussed it with these two guys that were involved in the incident, and you forget to discuss it with the other employees who come on shift number 2 or graveyard shift, who also operate that machine and who also may have this type of injury happen to them. So we have a lack of distribution of the lessons learned, because when we provide solutions for this, we forget that very important step to say, who else is affected by working at this machine where this incident happened? Who else needs to learn from these lessons? So those are some of the things that I've seen in my experience. Let's see. Last step. Then I had an employee that fell and tripped while stepping down a sidewalk curb. After talking to the employee, they were on the phone, so contribution. Once again, you can put it on the report as distraction. Someone is walking while looking at their phone, right? And they slipped and fell, or tripped and fell. And you're thinking, well, I'm not their babysitter. I'm not going to be watching them all the time and say, hey, don't walk and talk on the phone, or hey, don't walk and look at your screen. And yes, you could very well say that and put it down in your report. But the other thing is, let's learn from our mistakes. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again, right? So it goes deeper into, why was this person talking on the phone while they were on the sidewalk? Oh, because he or she was on their break. Have we had any training or handouts in regards to the use of phones in the facility? And even what that includes, even those moments when they're off work and they have to get on the sidewalk to their cars or the parking lots. They're off the clock, nevertheless, because they're still in our premises, right? And the company owns the premise. It is in your best interest that they don't get hurt ever. We don't want anyone to get hurt for that matter. It's not, let's not put it always in, citation, penalty, and liability issues or motivation. It's also because we truly want all of our employees, and that's the number one reason, actually. We don't want them to get hurt. We want them because they are the greatest resource our organizations have, all of our employees. So we want to make sure that we help them with those issues of distraction. So maybe a campaign about, not walking and being on the phone, just a campaign that brings up the awareness will actually help with that distraction. Another one, tripped over wood pallet while case picking. Okay, so right there and then you could say distraction. You could say, well, it's just a mistake. She just tripped. We have pallets all over the place. So of course someone's going to trip there on the floor versus why was the wood pallet on the floor or positioned right there and then? Anytime we want to go over providing solutions and helping with systemic deficiencies, we always go through the hierarchy of controls, right? That hierarchy of controls is how can we eliminate this problem? If we cannot 100% eliminate the exposure, how can we substitute it? And then how can we put a machine or a process that eliminates it or minimizes the risk? And then if that doesn't help, how can we implement administrative controls, which talks about the way people do their job? And the last thing that we put in place is PPE. And many times we end up with a combination of those things, but we gotta think in that order. So she tripped over a wood pallet. My question there is, have you done an analysis of the station, of the workstation? So you can take a look around and say, the wood pallets are always on left side or the right side. And it just happens that workers get a little bit caged or trapped when they are in that position. Maybe that's the case. And then you may want to analyze and look and observe the entire job, the entire task, so that you can find out if the positioning of the wood pallets on the floor could be a little different so that they have a way to exit that is visible and their brain catches on that and go one way versus just haphazardly causing people to trip. So once again, systems, right? System, what's the process? Why is that wood pallet there? Tripped over ground reflector when approaching trailer. And then you'll find out more, right? With that wood pallet thing, it could be that somebody else left it there. So it's about why did they leave it there? Were they in a rush? Do they not know where they put wood pallets after they move product or for the pallets to be inspected? Whatever the case may be, why was that wood pallet there is the huge question I have in my mind right now, right? So tripped over ground reflector when approaching trailer. Again, slip, trips, and falls are all over the place. And in this one, sounds like field work. And when field work takes place, one of my main things is you get to your site, and the first thing the worker has to do is go over a recognition of hazards, right? I talk to my deliverers. I have clients that do delivery of different kinds of things. It could be construction materials, it could be furniture, it could be whatever they're moving. Once you get to the site and you step off your truck or you step off your vehicle, you have to assess. Don't be so producing in finishing your job and checking those boxes off as to finishing the job site and going fast that you forget about all of those trip hazards that you will face every time you come out of your vehicle. So that's something that we review quite often, the hazard awareness when you are out there in the field, right? And maybe there's some systems there that you don't have in place for them to always look at. Once you get out of your vehicle, what are the tripping hazards around you? Clear your route to wherever you have to come and go to and from so that your route doesn't have those tripping hazards. So all of those things really do help. Okay, so with hockey and folded coating. There's coating on a floor that provides slight traction, preventing it from being slippery because smooth surface, shuffle their feet. Well, but that doesn't tell me what the injury is. Nevertheless, I am super grateful to all of you for kind of pitching in lots of slip, trips, and falls. You see why slip, trip, and falls should be one of your annual topics, even if it's not mandated by Cal OSHA. Slip, trip, and fall must be annually mandated. It's an awareness class where you go over the most common slip, trip, and falls hazards at your facility or at your jobs. So now I really like this exercise because we went from the placing blame to, wait a minute, I'm not just going to see it. The immediate cause is the distraction of this worker. The immediate cause is the wooden pallet on the floor, to, wait a minute, what are the systemic deficiencies here? And how can I, you ask why, why at least. So I'm using a very simple technique to ask why 3 to 5 times to dig deeper into those deficiencies that we may have, right? Very cool. So for your incident investigation, you got to get deep into securing your scene, start to collect information, facts about what happened. Then once you get to gather all of that and you put it all on your desk and you get through it to, take a look at what happened here, right? You got to, after you collect all the facts, you make sure you paint a clear picture of what happened, right? And then you get into developing the sequence of events so everybody can, any reader, your upper management, your supervisor, whoever, the safety committee who's reading these incidents, can have a clear picture of what happened. And then you should put an analysis of the facts that helped you determine the root causes, and then your report. You write your report, and then in your report, you're going to highlight your recommendations, short-term, long-term, because only by providing short-term and long-term, you're going to get some buy-in from upper management. So before having an actual investigation, be prepared to actually gather all the information that you need. Be prepared to get to the site faster, quicker. And I always ask you guys to have a kit. So always ask yourself, what types of incidents do I usually investigate? Am I up on scaffold to investigate incidents? Am I down on the floor near machinery and equipment? Am I at a facility with healthcare providers? So where are you at usually investigating? Now that you know where are you at when you usually investigate this injuries analysis, take a look at your records, right? Your workers' compensation, your OSHA logs, that tells you what kind of injuries you investigate. What kind of equipment do you need in that kit? And when I say a kit, it could be a briefcase, a bag, a backpack, right? That includes the forms that you may need out in the field, pens, paper, a measuring tape, shoe covers, all the PPE you may need, a hard hat. What kind of PPE? So ask this question and be ready, right? Have your written protocols, your OSHA decision-making sheet. That's a very good one. Number 2 here on the screen. Many times we fail to call OSHA, Cal OSHA in this case, to report a serious injury or illness. And that means when someone gets admitted to the hospital and it's serious enough for them to be admitted beyond observation, right? So if they're in the emergency room, but they're just being observed, they haven't been admitted, you don't need to call Cal OSHA. The moment they get admitted, you have to place the call, and you only have 8 hours to actually make the call, right? If you miss this window, then there's a fine associated with it. It's not a cheap fine, it's $5,000. So you want to make sure that you have some information. The basic information, you don't need to know it all, right? Because Cal OSHA will ask you who, when, what, that kind of thing. Be brief, don't give too much detail, but be ready to report to Cal OSHA. And it's important to include this cheat sheet in those written protocols because your supervisors need to know whether or not a call to OSHA needs to be made. Fire department and police are mandated reporters. So if they transport somebody from a place of employment to the hospital, many times they will make the call. And then Cal OSHA just sits there patiently waiting for your call as well. Okay, more things on collecting information and what would you need, the specific forms, the envelopes, your notebook, just ideas. It doesn't mean this is exactly for you, but like I said, when you ask the question, what kind of incidents do I usually investigate? You will have more of a vision as to what your kit should include, right? When is it a good time to start investigation? After you care for the worker first. So make sure they get taken care of by emergency services. If you're not going to call 911, someone is driving them to the clinic, don't let them drive themselves. Make sure that they feel well taken care of, right? But you do want to start investigating as soon as possible. So if you can start talking to that person and they can talk to you and you can write down or record. Also, always make sure that you know what are your protocols for recording, video taking, and picture taking, especially if you have unions involved. But do start as soon as possible, right? And make sure that you know, number 5 here on your screen refers to that cheat sheet, when to report to Cal OSHA. Okay, 3 forms. I invite you, as a to-do, that you look today in your forms or in your files for incident investigation. What are the forms that you're using? You should have a separate form for your employees that provides information just solely from them, that says, I got hurt on this day at this time, I was using these tools, this was the weather. And by the way, there's a question in that form that says, how do you think you could have prevented this incident? And let them run with it. And by the way, don't let any part of these forms to have blanks, because we do not like blanks. Blanks pose a greater question. It's like, why didn't they answer this question? If they don't answer, how do you think this could have been prevented? Then you go back to them and say, how do you think this could have been prevented? And they'll go, well, I didn't find a broom, and that's why I picked up all the glass with my hands, and that's why now I have 5 stitches. Okay, so how do you think it could have been prevented? Well, make sure that there's brooms always all around the area, and nice storage closets, or some of those boards for cleaning that I have my clients always install at their manufacturing places, because I don't want brooms all over the place that just create tripping hazards. Do want them nicely organized, but workers give you great input, and you want that on the form. You want a separate form for witnesses so that they are able to tell you. And the third thing is, you want supervisors to have a report that is separate. And in that form, you want to prompt them or help them find those root causes by giving them good forms. And let me show you an example of what I mean. So when you secure and document the scene, you got to have in your kit, the caution tape, etc. And once you get there, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What machinery? What about the environment, right? And then you start jotting down where, why, when, how, what, who, so that it points towards your solution. Right here in this page, you can see some of those collect information checklists provided by that guide by OSHA that I gave you the link for. It's great tools that are included in that guide. The initial statements, you get to take those initial statements, and then we go over this in our lengthier class, because you can tell it's a lot of information. There's a lot to incident investigation, right? And so you start taking pictures from afar, and then you got to make sure that size is important. And one thing that we have nowadays is timestamp, right? You want to make sure that all of your pictures are time stamped. The date and the time can happen if you get one of those apps that will put that stamp on your pictures. That's very important. And you also want to take video as soon as possible, and make sure that you take or capture statements and even witnesses if possible. Ensure that you leave your information with all these witnesses so that they can contact you in case they remember something else that they forgot to tell you at the moment they were talking to you. So sketching is also important, and this is included in that OSHA guide. It's an example of, you don't need to be a professional sketcher, but you can give me a drawing, especially if the person doesn't want you recording. It would be important to do that, and then put in which location of that sketch is where you were standing as you were taking pictures, right? Interview your OSHA logs, interview any human resources records and any other records that you may have. And once you bring that employee for an interview, you got to have some skills. So we go into some skills for a good interview versus a bad interview, because once you open up and you talk to them, you want to have good rapport with them and let them run with a narrative so that you capture as many details. You want to be very grateful for their time. And when you close, you want to make sure that they know that you're not trying to point the finger at anyone, but that the whole goal of this interview is to find those systemic deficiencies so that this doesn't happen again, right? Don't interrupt them. Don't show these preconceptions that, oh, I know that department. They're all lazy people. That kind of thing. Comments. Don't interrupt. Don't make comments. You're there just to find out what happened, just the facts, nothing that they believe happened, just facts. Stick to the facts, and then make sure that you write it down, and then go back later on to your desk and find out if there's anything else that you missed asking so that you can go back and ask more questions. So we get into body language techniques when we do our classes, and I talk to you guys how important it is your body language as you interview people during your incident investigation. I put some books there for you to read. Great books, by the way. And then we get into those direct costs, surface costs, and root costs, right? This is where the magic happens. So a direct cause is that unplanned release of energy or hazardous material that affected the worker and caused the injury. The very obvious cause. So the wood pallet on the floor that caused the employee to trip. That's my direct cause. But how about those surface causes? Well, conditions and behavior. So I love this by the Oregon OSHA guide for incident investigation. They put at the top is the direct cause, the trip. Employee tripped over that wood pallet. That's it. That's the flour, right? And then everything else, the surface causes are, why did she trip? She was in a hurry, too much work, failed to inspect the area. So you may think that failing to inspect the area is the cause of the injury, when in reality, this is still a surface cause because it falls within the category of unsafe behaviors or unsafe conditions. And you gotta take a look at the roots, right? And the roots are always things within the piece. Programs, plans, procedures that are not there or that were not effective and did not help prevent the injury. So let's just do a simple one here. Someone is driving and the vehicle breaks down, and then when the mechanic sees the vehicle, says, oh, it was just out of gas, but the gauge indicated the tank was almost full. So you ask why, right? And to ask why, you go, well, why did the vehicle stop? Why is it that we didn't know that the gauge indicated full, but in reality there was no gas? Oh, well, it was broken. Why was it broken? Because, the vehicle is old. Well, do we have any system that helps us with our older vehicles to have pre-checks or preventative maintenance that will help us determine things like this before they actually happen? Oh no, we don't have anything for preventative maintenance on our older vehicles. Bingo. Now you have something that is a root cause versus, well, this is just an incident you could have never prevented, right? So analyze those events to identify and describe the direct cause of the injury like we did right now. And then you get into events before, during, and after, right? And then you're going to take those events and you're going to separate them into behaviors or conditions. And they're both behaviors and conditions contributing causes or surface causes. And after you have those, then you're going to determine which of those are worth investigating in order to get to the root cause. I know this is a lot to take in because in an hour, it is really, truly impossible to do a whole injury and illness, an incident investigation course, but it is really highlighting some of the things that we miss most often. And that's why when we sent you notice of this, of today's topic, we said we make basic mistakes. Number one is placing blame, right? As an incident investigator, that's the one we make the most. If you're just pointing the finger on your reports, biggest mistake, very common. The second one is not looking beyond those immediate direct causes, right? And then the third one is not looking for that systemic deficiency. So when we talk about unsafe behaviors and unsafe conditions, this is what I was saying. Provide forms that your supervisors can look at and say, okay, so on this side of the column or on this side of the table, I have unsafe workplace conditions. And on this other side, I have unsafe behaviors. And you make a list, and if it's not there, you can add it. But you now have two divisions, right? Unsafe conditions, physical things that contributed to the incident, and then unsafe behaviors, things such as distraction, horseplay, etc., that many times end up as the only reason for your injury. No. You list them. And now you investigate them. You ask why, right? And once you start asking why, you can get to that root cause by saying, okay, if he was or she was distracted, like in the case of the person that was looking at a screen and walking with their phone on the sidewalk, you could have ended that investigation by saying, worker was distracted looking at the phone while walking on the sidewalk, and boom, and you don't even think of anything else, but why? And maybe it forces you to really look beyond that and say, okay, why? Because we've never really discussed that. Although it seems common sense, we should have something that reminds worker not to walk and look at their phone once they're off work, because maybe while at work you do have a policy for no personal phones, right? But once they're off work, once they are in their break, this is going to happen. But we've never thought of doing a campaign, for example. And now you're getting to really asking the right questions, employing a technique to solve those issues. And now you know that by helping work supervisors, your investigators have tools, their forms that divide those unsafe conditions, unsafe behaviors, and that explains to the supervisor, these are only surface causes. Now, I want you to grab that surface cause of distraction because it ended up on the list of unsafe acts by people. And I want you to investigate it and find the systemic deficiency so that we can prevent this from happening again. Well, I really do thank you all for your time. We are going to be sending you the dates where we can go over in depth, right? Because like I said, this is just an intro, kind of like a little taste to spark your interest and to make a list of all of those supervisors that need training right now. So I know many of you are like, yep, I have like 10 supervisors that are doing this, and their reports always end up with, employee was distracted, lack of training, and then the solution, we train the employee. Train the employee. You train the one employee that suffered the incident, no one else. Will that prevent it from happening again? No, it's going to happen to everybody else except for that guy, hopefully. So you did not really truly work it all the way to where you did not leave any stone unturned, and so that this will not happen again. I hope this did spark the interest of all of you. If you have any questions, I'm here. Veronica, thank you so much, and I hope everybody enjoys their weekend.
Thank you so much, Alba. I was just looking through the chat and through our Q&A feature. I don't think there were any questions that were left unanswered, but if anybody does have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. And then I did notice that there were a couple of folks who might be interested or had a training request. So feel free to email us in the email address I put in the chat. And I also put the evaluation in the chat, but you will also receive it in your email, in the follow-up email, as well as the slides and a link to the recording. So just make sure that you complete the evaluation if you would like continuing education hours, and also to let us know how we can improve. Thank you all so much and have a good weekend.
Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll keep in touch. You'll receive the slides, and then you can email us back with your request for training, no doubt. And remember, we do have bilingual services. Thank you so much, Veronica. We'll see you next month, everyone. Send your questions in, all right?